Hi guys, it's me Amina, your underwhelming film kid, and today we will be talking about the YA dystopian genre. Honestly, this is like a genre that I loved reading about and watching movies about in high school. And then it got to a point where I was like, I don't want to see this anymore. Get this out of my sight. Because I think they're fun. I think most movies are fun when it's just a concept, very much of a concept. And then like 2016 happened and I was like, I don't want to keep reading about my reality right now. I don't. It's not a fun time. But I'm going to do some deep diving because I didn't realize how many I read. I thought it was like maybe one or two, maybe three, but I was very much in love with this series before, with certain can't say I was in love with them because I think I might have read like one or two out of a few of them, and I just really like to see like the first book and how it was applied. Although this time we're going to be focusing on a certain type of them, and usually they're kind of like called like rebellion pieces because like, well, obviously it's a rebellion piece. It's not so much like a full-on war. It's not like sickness took over. This is literally just a rebellion and how they're taking back what they feel is rightfully theirs. Usually, of course, if it's YA, it is a young person, usually female. At least in like the 2010s, they were female, usually brunette, most obviously white, and they were like in an unjust society. 9 times out of 10 they will deal with class structures, so like how like their divisions create more issues. If they tried to focus on places that didn't really benefit as much, like the divisions that didn't really work out as much, but if they were an elite structure, it doesn't ever really affect them like the world order as it is now. And a lot of them, they're like the real world, what is that? I'm up here living in my penthouse. I don't understand what's happening down there. There's usually an evil person in charge. Sometimes gender usually flows with who it could be. Like in Divergent, it was, I think her name was Janine. In Hunger Games, it was most notably President Snow. Usually they're evil to maintain some sort of order and like whatever this system has been in place to set up. It usually comes at the expense of many, so like whatever keeps the top happy doesn't really matter if it affects the bottom. I guess they'll be fine. And they usually only do it to like quell any sort of rebellion. They're like, if we keep order, no one will be upset, not realizing that by doing so you're making them more upset. And then the rebellion happens. Usually something is wrong in the system. If they're at the elite, they're just not figuring this out. If they're at the bottom, they're kind of like, we should fight this system. So usually like it's been wrong. It's just that it's new to the protagonist to actually fight for the cause because they might have just accepted it in their life. And sometimes they figure out like the steps to this program through someone else, like in Matched. I think it's just like the dude who they kind of like, how do I put it, they like who they kind of like acted like, or who was supposed to be her actual match, but they just kind of like flicked it on and off real quick. She kind of knows that like, oh wait, there's something wrong with this picture. Also, I'm referring to a couple of different things throughout the series, so at times I'll be referencing Divergent and Matched. The Ugly series, maybe, I only read the first 2 books, so I don't really know what happens, but I do know it's kind of like them dealing with, it's like class, but almost not really, because it's like, that's the one thing I liked about dystopian genres, is that it took something from our modern world and then just made it like, blew it out of proportion, and that's why it's now dystopian. Like, it's not okay. And then also more notably the Hunger Games, and we'll get to that after we go through this list. Also, usually going back to the rebellions, usually there is some form of protest from like the lower classes. So like so those at the bottom are just like, we will not take this no more. I'm fighting for this. The whole way of life is threatened, and usually it's like politicians who are trying to like stop the fall, the crumble, which I think is very interesting, that usually most of the villains in these stories are politicians. Oops. Then I called it like the step program, and like what leads to like the big like overturn, because like it's not 12 steps. It's definitely not 12 steps, but there's like little baby steps that you take to get there. So you have like your writing, which is like your tipping point, the icing on the cake. We don't know what just happened. It can be like anything, but people are highly upset and they're making it well known. Then the protests become much more prominent, and then like the people in charge try to distract. So they'll usually, like I said, assuage. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that word. Assuage your fears. Well, so basically they kind of like try to cover up whatever they're doing with like more bullshit. So it's just like people are sick and they're dying. Then the system gets shook, and a little bit something integral to the way they function gets taken, kind of like how in Divergent, I think it was in the movie, I can't remember if this was in Insurgent, but I just remember like when she kind of like broke it off and people were like, wait, huh? And then learning that like they weren't alone and they were kind of being watched. Something gets shooken. The top feels threatened. They basically kind of like start throwing out expendables. Kind of like, oh, we'll get to that later. I don't want to go through that one just yet. And then the system falls to be rebuilt. So getting more into it, the one who I think did this best, and Hunger Games was one of those franchises that like came and left at like the perfect moment. Like it came out right after Twilight, so people who were looking for something else to watch, something else to like fan over. I remember like literally after I watched Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2, I walked out the theater and I was like, Dad, what else I gotta do? And then I was like, oh yeah, never mind, Hunger Games coming out in March. So it came and it ended at the perfect time, because it ended in like what, I think it ended in 2016 actually, if I'm thinking about it. Like I think it, no, yes, I think it did. I don't know, but I remember like when it ended at a perfect time where like things hadn't totally like fallen apart. So by the time that like Divergent came out, it kind of got crapped on a lot because people don't want to see their real life story right now. It's not fun. It was fun to watch and be like, oh wow, that would be funny if, and then we kind of got our own little taste of it and we were like, we don't want that anymore. Please stop showing those to me. So those who are like higher up in like those offices trying to like shove that further down our throat, please don't. Your time's over. Yeah, the Hunger Games. Your evil people in charge are President Snow, like we already discussed. There are also countless celebrities and pop culture. Basically the media is kind of like, it's like President Snow, then like media. And then you basically have, well, Caesar Flickerman, but in the grander scheme of things, you have the Hunger Games, you know, roll credits. But like, that in itself is already a problem. So they take like them being like at the bottom. So Katniss lives in District 12. In the books, I think in the books it says that she's actually indicated to be not white. In the movie she is, so like I guess that's fine. She's at the bottom. It's a mining city. It's basically modern day Appalachia. If you don't know what that is, I would suggest finding videos on that about like, I think it's like called The Children of Appalachia. I watched it in like the 10th grade, and it's basically just like poverty in rural areas and how that affects them. This is essentially what that is. Because they are also, fun fact, also a mining community. That's where a lot of people also died. People regularly starve on a daily basis, have little to no food and or resources unless you live in like the nicer part of town, which is like where PETA is. But like even then, it's kind of like you're still benefiting in an unjust society. So like the, I guess, go off. Money is almost nowhere to be seen, and that's basically it. But I forgot that little area that like Katniss lives in, but it's like, it's just known to be like the poor part of town, where there aren't exactly houses, they're more like little shacks. Because it's not the Hob. The Hob is like the marketplace. That's what's throwing me off. Maybe I'll figure it out later. Then you have Katniss, who our protagonist, our main character, who we're going to be following throughout the 3 books / 4 movies. She's 16, which is like a very iconic age in dystopian. Usually they're 16, and 16 is something, usually it's different for Hunger Games, because like Hunger Games is just like a broad age range, and that's just who got to be chosen. Other books, usually something happens when you're 16, very specific, and it's like 16 you have to make all of these life choices for yourself. In other books, kind of like in Match, that's when you found out your soulmate. Then you also find out, I think it was like a Divergent, that's when you pick which faction you want to go to. Like the Givers, when they just prescribe the jobs to you. And I think Uglies is when they actually gave you the, what's the word? You know the word I'm looking for. When they gave you the plastic surgery to become pretty. Which I remember reading that, and I think it's 16, because I remember when I kind of read it, I was like, how are you at 16 being like, yeah, go take care of yourself now? But usually something happens at these pivotal points, and it's kind of like that's the age where you have to like make all of your life decisions right here, right now. I could not imagine that as a 16-year-old making that, like, those life decisions for myself. I'm 21 and I'm like, huh, what life decisions? Because I make these decisions and it's like they might not always work, so I could not imagine doing this in a dystopian society. Also, Katniss is the oldest, which is something, usually these characters are older siblings, except for Divergent. I don't really know why that's the case, but like they're older, and I think that just kind of takes over being like some of their personality traits, how they take charge more often. She is the primary caregiver of her sister Prim. She is a hunter illegally, and her best friend forever is Gale. Usually, no, yes, okay, so usually there's also like a friend that comes around that's like the opposite sex, I guess, just to create tension for like heteronormative ideas. It's but then there's like also the whole thing with like the mom, and that also kind of takes place in being like the disconnect that you have with like parents, especially sometimes living in poverty. So we should think about that, take that in perspective. So the big point of this entire story is that she volunteers for her sister. None of this would have happened if Prim had never gotten chosen, which is like such a weird statement to make, but think about it. Because this is also very crucial to the story, is that like they basically put their name in extra times into the pool to get chosen, because like but the more times you put your name in, the extra like stuff you get from the government. So it's kind of like, so this particular time is Prim's first year ever, and she looks at Prim, she's like, don't you put your name in more times, don't sign yourself up for anything else, just don't do it. And Prim's like, okay. And then she like literally gets chosen, and like your name, and it's like such a small chance that her name should have ever been picked, because y'all remember that bowl from the movie, how thick in names that thing was, and literally she picks one up from the top and reads it off. Like, are y'all dead ass? Are y'all dead ass? And at this point, anyone else in that district, especially if they're like, I'm guessing like over 14, should have had like a higher chance of being picked, but they didn't, and they chose her name. I feel like that's just more social commentary. Good job, Suzanne Collins. Also, because like it's very much said in the books, I don't know if that they didn't really explain that to part in the movie, but I know they said like your name's only in there once because I told you only 2, but like her and Gale had like their names were in there at least a dozen times, if not like 2 dozen. Like they kept putting out more so they could get more money and food. So also basically also think of this as like children having to put their life on the line in order to get things that should be accessible, like food. If you don't, you should have food. You should. If you don't, that's just pointing out like a very big inconsistency in the government and how they're distributing wealth. We have the lead up. She meets her mentor and basically like her friend and all. I guess we can call him a friend, but low-key like a father figure in all of this. Hey Mitch, how you doing? Why? He's not even a real person. But you have Hamish Abernathy, who kind of like becomes like her guide through all of this, because even though like Katniss is very mature for her age, she's also very naive. I don't know what the hell this trope was about. It used to piss me off so much. But it's like they know about they know like the harsh realities of said world sometimes, but sometimes they don't always get the big picture. So then she also has some proper time with like PETA and all that cute stuff. They were trying to like put them together. Then like that whole thing with them like doing those interviews and those like photo ops before the games even started. Literally think of it as like a literal GoFundMe. Like, please understand, you doing all these cute interviews is for people to feel bad enough for you that they'll kind of like give you resources that you need to survive in the games. Your life is a bet. And then also there she gets to see Rue, another pivotal character in this story. In the games they obviously try to kill her, but her biggest adventure is that they put her in a forest this time around and she's like, fuck yes, I can hunt. This is literally my playground. Bad things happened. The big thing happened. Rue dies. Rue dies. Katniss puts flowers on her chest. Puts her down in like a bed of flowers. District 11, from which Rue was from, because they also talk about how the districts kind of work with each other with a beneficiary. So like those beneficiary like districts and like areas. So like if you're in the capital, you're good. You're not even in the games. You're just watching this for like funsies. None of this makes sense. If you are in districts that do pretty well with the capital, because I guess they kind of like keep their nose clean and don't cause trouble, would be like District 1, District 2, and I think District 4. District 3 was iffy. The next ones would kind of be okay, would be like 3, 8, maybe 6 and 7. 11 was kind of up there, and I think in a way Katniss also believed that like Rue was fine, but like District 11 didn't really have that many issues as District 12. And then when she's talking to Rue is like, I guess you could say that we're pretty like wealthy in certain standards, but then also like I've seen children get shot in front of me. And she's like, excuse me, she's like, I think she said like a little boy tried to steal some bread or something, and I think he was also like mentally disabled, and they killed him for it in broad daylight. The peacekeepers killed him. Katniss had no idea, and then when she realized that, she was like, so we've never had that in District 12. So it's like she starts finding like little things that are wrong in different areas, that while they may have more wealth, that does not mean that like that stops them from getting killed out here. Because at this point District 11 is pissed because they lost a young girl. This was also, fun fact, this was also Rue's first year as well. Kind of like how Prim was the first year she had to get Rue. This was also Rue's first year, but she didn't have an older sister to take care of. She was the oldest, so she had to go, and no one else wanted to take her place. Resources. So after that, they then just and also trying to like hide whatever's going on. They're like, hey, so like don't be so mad about that. What we're gonna do is that like if you have another person in your district, you can kind of like, you know, go hang out with them, I guess. Y'all, if there are two people from a district, y'all can both win and it'll be fine. And then they tried to call it off at the end, but then like Katniss is like, we gonna eat these berries, and PETA kind of goes with it. Just know that the world is very shooketh, and she has started something that even she can't put a cap on. So then we get to Catching Fire. This next is going to be very quick because much of it's very quick. I had to do the calculations of this to realize that in the Hunger Games, about 1,725 children have died in these games. And that's because I don't really know what the 25th year with the first quarter quell was like, but every year they reap 24 children. That just means 23 have died every single year, except for Hey Mitch's year, who won the second quarter quell. And if you remember in the books, that's the year where they doubled the amount of children. So instead of 24, there are now 48 kids trying to fight for their life. And in Katniss and PETA's year in the 74th Hunger Games, 22 children died. And it's weird to say only 22, but still 22 children were killed off. And those who were left behind, who were the victors, I cannot even imagine the amount of PTSD that they have. At this point, the protest has started, and Mr. President Snow cannot put a cap on it. He's shook. He doesn't know what to do. He tells her to try and convince him. So, you know, like maybe they'll stop fighting. Oh, hey. So people are upset about the Hunger Games and they're sick of the untreatment. What do? We send Katniss and Peeta on tour. I guess they'll be fine. People are upset. They don't know how to stop them. Oh yeah, y'all remember that trying to put them on that tour? Panem today, Panem tomorrow, Panem forever. That is some creepy stuff, and I'm set up for the 75th Hunger Games. Basically, I guess because they felt like maybe this will make people stop being mad. Maybe this will tell them that like they're not untouchable and they want to go against what we say. Mostly for Katniss. That's literally it. They're kind of like really mad at Katniss at this point. So they're like, how to get back at her. Oh, I know. You remember all those people who won, who already have PTSD? We're just going to put them back in the game. So now they're going to be our new pool of victors. So this time, your children won't die. But the people who did make it out and thought they were fine, I guess, you can go back in. It becomes more gruesome because at this point, these are all like winners. In the books, in the movie, Haymitch was like, these are all trained killers. But I'm like, think about it. These are children trying to live. Yes, they are killers, but like, please understand. They were children when they won. And I think at the time, like the youngest one who won up until that point was Finnick Odair. So I think in the book he was like I think max 25, but I think he was like 21. Also, like the big thing happened, their one thing that they had to hold over them gets shaken because Katniss fires the bow up into like the top of the dome. It falls apart. So therefore there are no more Hunger Games, and President Snow is pissed, and I mean utterly pissed. So the next like two-parter of like the movie / the book is that basically just dealing with like media propaganda and like how we're gonna get people to our side. There's also like an entire video on Kato's channel that I just saw that said that basically is talking about like how Katniss basically being knocked out in this war makes sense. I'll like link his video in the description below. But I think out of like all of that talking and nonsense, I've been doing for at least 24 minutes now because my battery timed out twice. Times out about 12 minutes each. I think my biggest question I have to ask is, going back to the first book, when Rue gets killed and District 11 riots, as it rightfully should, because that is another one of their children being killed on live TV for people's entertainment, and no one seems to care. Why is it when people were protesting and rioting in the streets, everybody act like they didn't know what the hell was going on? Just think about it. What about that made that so much more understandable than what's going on in the world today? Is it the fact that you thought it was fiction? Because I hope you know a lot of times from fiction, things are drawn from real life. I don't know if you just thought it wouldn't affect you, but obviously in this story, it shows that like you were not invincible. Because if anything, in Hunger Games, when they couldn't get hold of like the people at the bottom anymore, they started taking it out on the top. So please understand. What? I've been on Twitter a little often. There have been a few days where like it just physically hurt to keep scrolling, but I did because there were days when like literally I just couldn't, because I would sit there and go through comments and people would literally sit there and go, all lives mattered. If that were true, why are so many people still dying? People still love to bring up black on black crime, which doesn't exist. It's your proximity. It's not because they're black. It's because of where you live. Because if that's the case, white on white crime also exists. Latinx on Latinx crime also exists. And I know people want to truly believe this is a free country. In some ways, it can be, but at the same time, I have to point you back to a history book, because for everyone, it has not always had the same levels of freedom as for other people. So, I could not in good conscience ask you guys to come here and watch my videos every week. I can't say every week, we're getting better on that. But I could not in good conscience ask you guys to sit here and watch my videos and I couldn't even speak on these social issues properly. Because when I tell you that Black Lives Matter, they do. Because Breonna Taylor and David McAtee and Tony McDade, and then more recently, Jamel Floyd, I just saw this yesterday, who got killed from being pepper sprayed, still haven't gotten any justice. So, you already know the drill. If you've been on Twitter enough, find somewhere to donate. I think the Minnesota Bail Fund is overflowing right now, I think. But find somewhere to donate your money to. If you have it, sign petitions. If you want to help rebuild Black businesses, I'll see if I can find some kind of donation fund that you can to do that too, because I know a lot of people are also upset at the businesses that are being looted. Personally, I'm just like, businesses can be replaced, my life cannot. But if you want to help those Black businesses who have gotten hit along the way for the looting, do your part. Don't sit there and complain about it. And then also, sign your petitions. Please donate. I will find something else in the bottom. And if you cannot donate, if you honestly do not have the funds right now, there are a couple of videos out there that you can watch and just watch them with all the ads, no skipping at all. I started one today. I think I'm just going to restart it as I edit my videos for the day, but just like watch them and let the ads go to proceeds for these funds. Just don't skip the ads. I know that's hard. I don't care if it's like a 5-minute ad. Do something. And also, it is Pride Month, so if you're going to be pro-Black, you got to be all pro-Black, and that means pro-LGBTQ+. Intersectionality does exist. You don't get to pick and choose who you're being pro-Black for. Pro-Black comes in all different shades and forms. So, and also for my fellow Black people out there, I'm like, I know it's like the works, I'm also kind of like reading this from my list because I have to organize my thoughts. For my fellow Black people, I know it is a super tough time out there. Please attend to your mental health. And honestly, I see you and I appreciate you and you are incredible. Also, if you happen to be out there protesting, please go get tested for COVID-19. We still are in the middle of a pandemic. And then one last thing, I'm going to put this out there because some people just don't seem to understand, including some of my parents. You don't need to be respected nor and or respectable in order for your life to matter. If you personally feel that way, you have to tell me why. Why do I have to be respected in order for my life to matter? Also, one last thing, I do have more videos coming out, so if you want to tune back in, I will be doing more videos. I am essentially, I don't even have a role, I just really like movies, and I like talking about movies. That's my favorite thing to do, and that's literally it. But just understand that, like, while some people can use their platforms as an escape, I thought about doing a current like events channel, and then I realized no, because that's going to be putting way too much like pressure and just like upsettingness into my life. But the thing is that once I kind of like turn off this camera and I edit my videos and I put it up, I'm still Black at the end of the day. I don't get to like have a break from that. I am Black forever. It's not a choice. I don't get to choose to be that. I am Black. A light-skinned Black woman, don't get me wrong, but I am still Black at the end of the day. So basically, this is kind of like calling out a few people that I've been seeing on social media being like, it's my escape. I don't get to escape being Black. So with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. My next video will probably be on remakes. I don't know when I'm going to release it, because right now I think I just want to focus on basically getting justice. I know the other 3 cops were just arrested, and I have to see what charges they're getting, but that's literally it. So thank you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.